So glad we're here together at church on this amazing Sunday in the summer. There's a lot of stuff on fire right now, isn't there? Okanagan, we were talking about, of course, Maui. We need to keep praying for the people who, Maui's not on fire anymore, but people who are affected by that fire. I was down in Spokane, Washington. Who knows where that is? It's in eastern Washington, kind of, most of you do. It's not that far from here. It's about, 7-hour drive from here or something. We have family there, and I was down there this last week, and Spokane is now, we actually just barely kind of made it out. Spokane is now all kinds of fires around it, and the freeway is closed because of the fires, so just lots of prayer that's needed. We were talking earlier about water, right? And this is a time we're in actually a drought right now. I was looking up some of the drought in British Columbia. I guess I didn't really believe. Could we really be in that much of a drought? We're British Columbia, right? It rains all the time, 45 inches of rain, but the water levels are really, really low right now. Some rivers are at 10%. There's a river in BC, I don't remember which one it is. It's at 10% of its normal flow during August. 10%. That's crazy. So there really are some things going on there. Spokane, Washington, so you got this idea, right? All these fires all around, but then you've also got these places where there's nice, cool water. And eventually, the rains will come and put out all those fires, won't they? I had an experience in Spokane, and I want to tell you about it. And this will help us as we get into our text for today, which is Psalm 46. And Psalm 46 has a lot of this idea about, there's sort of a battle raging and chaos going on all around, but at the center, God is there. His peace is there. His presence is there, and we can still access him. Okay, so Spokane, Washington, this is a picture of it. Spokane actually, it's maybe got a little bit different style, but it's actually got some similarities to Surrey. It really does. Some cultural similarities to Surrey anyway, even though it's an American city. Yeah. So this is it. That's a nice, pretty picture of it at night. And Spokane is a place, it's got both areas that are more upscale, nicer areas, and it's got some areas that are really quite rough, right? A lot of homelessness and drug addiction in certain areas of Spokane. And so it's got all that going on all at the same time. And while we were there, we decided we wanted to do something fun. And we love floating down a river on an inner tube. Does anybody else love floating down a river on an inner tube? It's one of the best things for me, bang for your buck. It's one of the best things you can do in the summer. We normally have done that a couple different places. And I guess ever since I was a kid, I grew up part of the time in Spokane. And there is a river in Spokane. It's called the Spokane River. Remarkable, huh? And there are people who float down it on inner tubes. And ever since I was a kid, I've wanted to do that. But there's actually quite a resistance in Spokane to floating down this river on an inner tube. So when I would ask my dad as a kid, I would be so bored at my dad's house. It's just hot. We had no air conditioning. I think that was back in the olden days before air conditioning had been invented, I don't know. And, it was just muggy. I'd be sitting there with my brother on the couch in the hot August heat. Dad, can't we do something? And I remember asking him if we could go float the river like those people. And he would say this to me. He'd say, "Oh, no, son, people die on that river. That's a dangerous river." And so we never floated the river. And so while I was in Spokane this time, that part of the story I didn't tell my family. But while I was in Spokane this time, I looked up this river. I said, come on, people float this thing. There's got to be a safe way to do this. And I looked it up, and there's all kinds of guides on how to float this river on inner tubes. And it's really just about the time of year and how much water flow. And anyway, there's even a company that takes people. You know how those companies do? They take you up, and they give you an inner tube, and they let you float down the river. So we signed up with this company to go float the river. And we were all excited. Everybody was excited. And then somebody in the family, of course, said, people die on that river. So here's the experience of floating the river. So it started out like this. We all woke up in the morning. We were going to go float the river. And I think half of us woke up scared because somebody had said the night before, people die on that river. And so people woke up going, should we really float this river? Should we really? So I said, yes, we should float this river. So we all We all go out. We all go out and we get together. We go to find the company. And so we drive through the city, right, through the nice parts and some of the rougher parts of Spokane. And actually where we went to go meet the company that picks you up is in a parking lot near the river. And it was actually kind of a rough part of town. Like there was like a homeless encampment in part of the same parking lot. So that didn't make us feel really safe and secure, right? Like one of my youngest son was asked if we should call 911. I said, no, we should just say hi to them and be nice. Be nice, right? They're people, right? Just because they don't have a home. Anyway. So, of course, there's problems there. But so there's all this stuff surrounding the river. And actually, there are a lot of kind of rougher people who spend their time near this river. So we went through all these parts of Spokane and got closer and closer to the river. What's my next picture that I got up here? And the city is, we traveled through all the traffic jams and the homeless encampments and all the different things that are going on in the chaos of the city. And then we got onto the river, okay? This seems not to be working again, guys. I don't know. We traveled through the homeless encampments that were near the river. And then we got onto the river. And this was, I think for me, partly because it's the Spokane River and I grew up there, this was kind of a lifetime experience for me. I think I will always remember getting on this river because it was almost like being in the secret place. The whole city is chaos. The traffic jams, everybody running back and forth, stressed out, the drug addiction problems, homelessness, all the stuff, the hot summer heat of the city. And then you get into the river and you find the still, quiet place of peace. And all the rumors that I'd heard about this river being dangerous, guys, was the river dangerous? Not at all. At least not when we went on this river. It was floating down in tubes. There were eagles flying over us. There were fish in the streams. It was rest and peace. And there were actually some kind of amazing things in the river. That video should play. Sorry, I didn't mean for that to be up, Andrew. That first part was supposed to be cut out. This is my shaky video. I had my phone out, actually my brother-in-law's phone. He was like, risk my phone to take videos. We saw in this river a full-grown bull moose. That's what you're looking at right there. We just floated down, peace and quiet in the stillness, and here he is just hanging out in the river. It was like a word from the Lord. The whole time, I was just so full of joy, and I felt like, how have I not known that this was here my whole life? I mean, when I was a kid, I was there. I've traveled to Spokane throughout my adult life, and I've never known that this place of peace and rest was running right through the center of the city. I could have been floating down that river for the last 40 years, and I haven't been. That's so sad, but I finally made it. Okay, so this is our illustration today. We're going to go through, I can't believe we saw a bull moose. Can you believe that? We were a little scared of him too at first. What's he going to do? And what he did was just, I don't know, he was probably blessing us or something. I don't know. God was blessing us through him. So we're in a series right now, and we're going to take a look at one of these Psalms. We're in a series right now called God's Playlist for the Road, Psalms to Take With You. And we've been looking at each week. We're going to continue this for a few more weeks. We've been looking each week at one of the Psalms, one of God's worship songs that he gave to the ancient Israelites. He gives them to us as well, though they are not set to music most of the time anymore. Although we sang one this morning. We actually probably sang a couple this morning in different ways, pieces of them. And we're thinking through those. We're looking at the lyrics. We're encouraging you to pray and seek God and ask him which of these Psalms you should take with you into your life. How many people have found one so far this summer and said, that's the one I'm going to take with me? 3 people. Okay, no, 4. That's good. For me, it was Psalm 139. I've continued to go through that. Although every week, I'm like, it's got to be this one. This has got to be the one that I'm going to take with me. So this week, we're looking at Psalm 46. And the title of the message today is Down to the River, because that's what I did. And this, in a large way, that's going to be our illustration, our metaphor today, and that imagery is used in Psalm 46. We need to go down to the river. We need to go to the place where God is. We need to seek him and find him where he can be found. Now, of course, God is everywhere. But there are not so much physical places, but there are places in our lives where we need to seek him and experience him so that we can live in the other places, in the chaos of the city, in the right way. Recognizing that the chaos of the city and the forest fires, that's not really life. That's not the end. That's not what defines life. God is the one who defines what life is. He is the end. He is the future. So we'll look at Psalm 46, and we're just going to take it kind of in three parts today. It's not very long, and it's got some really famous verses. And actually, I'm going to say it's got kind of three verses that I would say are the most famous. You're going to see each of those, one in each section. And the first section begins, we read it earlier in the offering, I'm going to read it again now. It begins by talking about how all fear is gone. For the person who believes in God, who puts their faith in God, all fear should be, can be, progressively more and more, gone. Because we can trust him, because of who he is, there's no reason to fear. So this first verse, of course, is a very famous verse. If you're familiar with the Bible, you will probably have heard this verse before. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. God is our refuge. So that already from the very beginning, this psalm goes after this idea that God is almost like a place where we can go to be safe. We can go to him. And in some sense, we can live in him. And he is our strength. I can't tell you how much that experience on the river, which really was, it's not just because of the river. It's because of what the Holy Spirit was doing in me as I was on that river. It just represents really who God is for me. But I can't tell you how much that experience on the river is giving strength to me as I think back on it. And I think it will actually for quite some time if I keep my mind on it. That's what God is like. He's like this secret, still river, this place of peace and blessing in the middle of the chaos. So God is our refuge and our strength. He is always present to help us in trouble. So the psalm begins with the basis for our confidence. The one who made us is actually with us. And he's arranged things through his son Jesus, through Jesus dying on the cross, through sending the Holy Spirit into the world, Jesus coming back to life from the dead to prove that he's conquered death. God has arranged things so that when we put our trust in him, he can be for us a refuge and a strength and constantly with us in this life. And if that's true, then should we fear? So answer the question. So if this is true, this is not rhetorical. If this is true, if this is the actual situation in life, should we ever be afraid of anything? No, we shouldn't. Now, of course, are we ever afraid of anything? Yes, okay? There are so many fears in this life. So many fears. And we could think of fear in the sort of strong sense, or we could think of worry and anxiety. All these things like a dark, chaotic cloud in our lives. There's no reason for it. There's no basis, no logical ground to be afraid if we are followers of Jesus and we have put our trust in him, because he is with us all the time. But we still do fear. And so the psalm continues. It begins with this. This is the basis, but it continues. Therefore, we will not fear. Though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. So look at the picture that is painted here. The psalmist is basically saying, like, no matter what happens, no matter what the most chaotic thing that you can imagine that would happen, we will choose not to fear. And so that's what we talked about for a minute earlier during the offering time for the believer. If you are a person who's here today or watching online, you've chosen, you've decided to follow after Jesus. I'm going to put my faith in him. I believe in him. But now the question becomes, with respect to fear and all the stuff of this life, will I choose faith over fear? will I choose it. And what I love about this psalm is the writer, the psalmist is almost, he's conjuring up the craziest situation he can imagine, right? Even if the earth gave way, even if there were earthquakes and the sea was raging and the mountains were collapsing into the very center of the ocean, the whole earth were falling apart. Even if that were to happen, I will not fear. That's what he's saying. It's a declaration. He's choosing it. And this is one of the things that this psalm is bringing to us. We must choose not to fear. We must choose not to fear. I thought I had another slide there. Okay. Second piece. How do we do it? So the psalm continues. You might think, okay, I want to choose not to fear. Probably many of you have thought this over and over again throughout your life as you've struggled with fears. I know that for many people, just not only believers, unbelievers. I remember my grandmother telling me once that what she was going to do in her retirement years was really trying to analyze and figure out why she's had so many fears in her life. Henry David Thoreau famously said that the great mass of human beings live lives of quiet desperation. Human beings struggle with fear. All the people around you struggle with them, even if they pretend like they don't, even if they pretend that to themselves. But it is true that believers can make massive progress in this area, huge progress. And so the question is how? Okay, so yes, we need to make a declaration. We need to recognize that God is there. There is a river in the middle of the chaotic city of my life. There is a river. He's going to say that in a minute. We need to recognize that God is there and decide that we're going to choose faith over fear. But then what? How do we do it? Haven't you had so many times in your life where you said, I'm going to do that, and yet you still can't sleep at night? Don't answer. The next thing that the psalm tells us to do is to go down to the river. Just like I did in Spokane, and there were some obstacles to me getting there, right? There were actually rumors about that river wouldn't be what I think it is. If I really put my trust in it, that river might kill me. There were things in the way of me getting to that river, things on the edges of it that looked like, oh, that's scary, I don't want to. But when I got down to the river, that's where the change happens. Here's what the psalm says next. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. There is a river. Are you going to that river regularly? Is your life based there, or is your life based in the chaos of the city? You must go to this river. God is within her. She will not fall, for God will help her at break of day. I love this line as well. God will help her at break of day. What does that mean? There's going to be nights. There's going to be forest fires in this life. There's going to be the chaos and the traffic jam, but God is still there. That does not mean He's abandoned us. He will help at break of day. We got to remember that the river is there. The rains will come. Nations are in uproar. Kingdoms fall. He lifts His voice. The earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. The next section, the last section of this psalm, has the very famous lines, "Be still and know that I am God." Let's take a look at that for a minute. Come and see what the Lord has done. The psalm is encouraging us to remember what God has done and to go down to the river, but also the desolations He has brought on the earth, the ways that He has destroyed all the things that claimed the right to rule over him, all the things. There's some sense in which that river is the real thing going through Spokane. And I've struggled to know how to get that across. Like there's the city and the chaos, and all of that is, in a sense, temporary. Whereas the river, which God placed there, and human beings are supposed to interact with, we're supposed to do things to help the river, and it's not devoid of human beings, but it is in some sense the real thing. And this is how God is in our lives. There's the chaos, but God will bring all those things to an end. Those things will pass, even the things that seem like they're going to overwhelm us, that are attacking us constantly. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." I want to say two things about this last section, and then we'll actually wrap up in just a minute. This line is a powerful verse. If this psalm strikes you as one you might want to take with you, you might even just want to spend weeks or months just thinking about this line. So we said at the beginning, the psalm begins, there's the basis for our confidence. Why is it that we don't have to have any fear? Because the God of Jacob is with us. The God who made us is our ever-present help. And that's, of course, how the psalm just ended as well. Reminds us of that at the end. This is the basis of our confidence. It's not just faith in nothing. It's faith in the reality of God. Then it said we have to make a choice. Even though there's no reason to fear, we have to choose faith over fear. We have to actively choose it. We have to be bold like the psalmist has been and say, no matter what happens to me, even if everything in my life seems to be falling apart, I will choose to trust God. He absolutely will win this battle. Now, how do we get our emotions to recognize that? Sometimes we choose it and we make that declaration when we're tossing and turning in the night and we can't sleep, but our emotions won't go there. The way that we begin to get our emotions and our minds and even our bodies to follow after God in that way is by going down to the river, seeking after God and finding the place where He is. Just like my family and I did when we were in Spokane, going to that river. You got to find where the river is in your life. It might be actually a place where you can go and be with God. I do this a lot in Watershed Park. I just go and I walk and I sit and I try to hear Him and I speak to Him a little bit. But it might not be a physical place for you. It might be a time in your life or a space, a relational space. Maybe there's a person that when you're with them, it helps you focus on God strongly. We need to go to the place where we can find God in our lives, and then we need to be still. And I've heard, this is not mine, I've heard this a number of times from a couple of different pastors, but this is a powerful way to think of this verse. Sometimes we're so busy doing all the stuff, aren't we? We're almost just like the city and the chaos. Sometimes we need to just be. Sometimes we need to be still. Sometimes that's what will allow us finally being quiet, is what will allow us to hear God speak the things He needs to say into our lives. When we are still in the right way, seeking after God, we can come to know all kinds of things. Things about ourselves, things about our world. I am struggling to get across today just the feeling I had in that river. All this other stuff that we do is temporary. God is eternal. We can be still and know that He is, and He is God. One of the ways you might use this verse is just to take each of those pieces and say them to yourself in a quiet place. Say them to God. Say them in His presence. and then listen. Try to receive whatever he's bringing to you. What I want to wrap up with is just two thoughts. I've been thinking through a lot of different songs as I've gone through this series. We've gone through this series on the Psalms. In this, earlier in the Psalm, it said that, look at the desolations God has brought on the earth. Look at all the things people do and all the ways people fight and all the attacks that come at you from human beings, from the enemy. And then it says, in the middle of that psalm, it says, the Lord speaks and the earth melts. There's one song that I can't even remember what the name of it is. Some of you will know. But it says, speaking of God, the things that I'm afraid of are afraid of you. God is actually the ultimate. He is the end. He is the thing that's more powerful and more terrifying in a certain sense than any of that stuff that attacks us. All that stuff fears him in the end. And then finally, there's one song we've had, you guys were cheering earlier, some of you, for the Momentum Youth Conference. Some of you hung out there for a while this summer. And the playlist from the Momentum Youth Conference has been on repeat in my house and my car because of my lovely wife who's really into it. And one of the songs in that playlist, I can't remember the name of this song right now, but in the bridge of this song, it says, "Fear is not my future. You are." It says, "Death is not the end. You are." All of this stuff that attacks us, all of the crazy things that come, they will pass away. There is a river that makes glad the city of God. Go down to the river, be still, and know that he is God. Let's pray. We'll continue in worship.